Hello and welcome to this 9th movie in this Renderosity tutorial series on POSER 10 and POSER Pro 2014. I'm Mark Bremer, and in this movie we're going to take a look at some animation basics for working with characters. We've kind of dealt with animation over the preceding two movies. One happened to be some character animation, basically with some runtime poses we insert into a timeline. The movie just before this was some real animation basics dealing with an inanimate object, which was our cryo chamber, and how we kind of look at large motion to small motion. In this movie we'll look at working with people and how to make them a little more believable when you work with them. So I have a basic character sitting on a couch right here, and I have chosen Sydney because there are a lot of pre-built morph targets built into her. She's a fantastic character to work with to go ahead and create some unique looks real easily. So let's begin with that. And before we get started, we're going to start using shortcuts because there are so many things to jump around into in working with animation that I use them to save some time. The first is I'm working with a posing camera, so you can kind of see the scene right here. There is a keyboard shortcut for this when we work with it, and I'll right click right here and we come down to cameras. We've got our main camera and posing camera. The posing camera can be accessed if you're on the Mac by pressing the command key and the comma, or if you're on the PC, the control key and the comma. The main camera is either going to be command M or control M depending on your system. So I wanted you to see what the scene looks like. This is something where we could do a camera pullback or something later on. But as with most animations, it's broken up into very small segments. So we're going to look at the character's head during this. I'll switch to the actual main camera that we render from. And we'll take a look at how to have this character kind of be listening to somebody, get puzzled by something, and just normal kind of head behaviors as something dawns on them and they smile. So this will be a progression from kind of puzzled look to, oh, I get it type of look. The other thing I want to call your attention to is that we have a character that looks pretty normal right here. I've got the camera zoomed in close to the head, but I've changed some of the main camera parameters, and I'm going to show you what this is so you can get a good idea of some of the things I've changed. The really only thing I've changed right here is increased the focal length here, if you look on the right hand side, to 100 millimeter. When you think of handheld 35 millimeter, what happens is when you take that digital camera, or I should say our pretend camera inside of POSER, and zoom it into the character, you get those shots that look like those pictures people take of their dogs, where the nose is too large, the head is really small. So we're just doing a standard filmmaking technique where you go ahead and pull the camera back, put on what's called a long lens to kind of flatten everything out so you don't get those real perspective distortions, and that's the camera we'll be working with here. Additionally, I have also, under this object here, since we have the camera selected, I've locked this object. This means that I can't inadvertently zoom in and out with my mouse wheel or animate it and screw everything up. Now, we're not going to get into render settings and how we proportion this rendering. Right now I'm just going to have it render what we see, and actually we're probably not going to do any rendering at all here, just the posing stuff. So let me pop back to our posing camera here real quick with keyboard shortcut command or control comma. So this is a case where we can see the character. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit and get a good sense of what's going on. On another shot we might have a camera orbiting around the character, something like that. But let's get into the animation basics now of working with this character. Let's modify our scene setup right here so we can go ahead and see something we'll be working with, which happens to be the Keyframe Editor. If I go ahead and click this little key right down here for Edit Keyframes, I do that and the window pops up right here, which shows me the last thing we were working on happened to be our main camera right here. These green dots, just as a refresher, are the current point in time. Everything's been keyframed automatically by the system right at keyframe 1. Something else to take a look at is that this animation is going to be 120 frames long. We can change the frame rate, how many frames per second in the animation settings, but I'm using a standard, I should say POSER standard, 30 frames a second. So at 30 frames, we'll just go 3, 6, 9, 12. This is a 4-second animation that we'll take a look at close up on the character's head. I'll shift back into our main camera here, command or control M, And what I want to do so you can see it and I don't have to keep moving this back and forth is to go ahead and dock this into our scene. Now, we've looked at docking in another movie and how you can move things around. This docking screen is actually quite particular in where it goes. So once we set it in the dock, it actually, well, it docks automatically, and that's where it goes. We can't change the location of it, but we can go ahead and change the size just a little bit here if we want to. That's actually as small as it gets. Now you'll notice that I can scroll inside this to see more of the timeline. Actually, let me grab the time bar down here. And we can scroll up and down if we need to. Everything is collapsed in here, and we can see that everything here is also animatable. All right, we've got the main camera going on right here, and what I might do, the main camera is where it's going to render, and I want to be able actually to zoom in and out a little bit so you can see things more clearly. I keep switching back and forth between the cameras. Let's go to the posing camera right here. I'm going to hold down the Command or Control key and use my mouse wheel to zoom in just a little bit. Now we can kind of see this 35mm big nose effect that's going on. So, whoops, didn't want to do that. Let's go ahead and orbit the scene just a little bit. We are going to do some course actions first. We've got a 4-second animation. I'm going to bring the timeline scrubber all the way back to frame 1. What I want our character to do is to go ahead and, after 1 second or so, turn the head so it's looking centered, look down, kind of pull back the head just a little bit, and maybe towards 4 seconds turn a little bit back, like this person that's speaking to her is over here on the right hand side. We'll always do the course animation first, and then we're going to get into the details of eye blinks, facial expressions, all those types of things. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and select our frame editor down here. I'm going to just advance this to frame 30, and we'll make it real easy on ourselves by picking round numbers on a per second basis. I'm going to click right on her neck, although we could use some other tools to select that if we wanted. We can see that neck is selected up here in the Properties palette. And what I'll want to do here is say, okay, let's go ahead and twist this just a little bit. Currently it's right at 38 degrees, which is where I just randomly kind of set it with the character as I brought it in. I am going to just click this and change it to 37. It's a very subtle change. But what I'm going to do now is that this puts a keyframe in and prevents extra motion from automatically being introduced. We see a little bit as I scrub the timeline right here. But as I go to, say, frame 60, which is 2 seconds, I want the head to be looking all the way forward. So what I'll do is adjust this twist value right here to 0. I'm also going to want the head to bend down just a little bit right here. Now you'll notice I didn't do the same thing with the keyframes getting it set. We're going to get some different motion going on, and we can adjust it and edit it later. So the first thing I wanted to do there was simply get the twist so it begins and stops at a known range and time. For bend here, let's go ahead and have this head bend down just a little bit. Let's advance to frame 90. We're at 3 seconds. I am going to have the head come back up just a little bit. Maybe tilt just one way or another. And then let's go ahead and have it twist just a little. These are extra motions that get put in, say, for just normal kind of behaviors with people. People always usually have a slight bit of motion always going on, a little bit of head bob or something like that. And then we're going to come all the way to the very end of the animation at frame 120. And now what I want to do is have the character go ahead and look back towards the direction of the person that's talking. And maybe now we can go ahead and tilt the head just a little bit forward, maybe a little bit side to side the other way. And there we've got that. So let's scrub the timeline and see what's going on. I can go ahead and play this through, and we'll see it at about a 4 second where we get a little bit of movement there. And that might be just a little too much. I might want a greater hesitation. Fortunately, all this material is editable. Now it looks like we've only got just a few type of keyframes up here. Let me go ahead and drag the little scrubber right inside here. Where the light green are, that's every place we've had a keyframe. So at 30 seconds, 60, 90, and finally 120. Let's expand Sydney G2 and we'll see exactly what's being animated. Right here, it is strictly the neck. We don't see any other green lines indicating that there has been some additional animation going on. Well, this is where we begin this. So what I want to do is we've got our character with a just regular expression right here. Let's advance to the next keyframe, and we can do that by simply clicking the little next keyframe button here. We are at timeline 30 automatically. So what I want to do is have our character frown here. So let's go ahead and back out of the neck. Body parts, actually let me grab this where you can see it and it will make a difference. Sydney. Whoop. We're running out of space here. This is why big monitors are nice. I'll go ahead and do this. What I'm going to do is simply tell you what I'm selecting over here. Since we can't see that actually, can I not grab that from there? I can't. This is just a problem of working with a condensed viewing space that we have for the purpose of these tutorials. So I'll come down to body parts, chest parts, and flying off the screen that you can't see, I'll choose the object head. Now with head, we've got a whole bunch of things that open up right here. We've got our face morphs, and I'll go ahead and close the morph here for body type. So we're only working with the face morph. And the first thing I want to do is have our character frown a little bit. So I can close up eyes. Let's come down to brow and open this up. She's being told something. It's puzzling her for a second. So what I want to do is have the brow go ahead and come down. I'll just give it a value around of 1. We'll go ahead and advance to the next keyframe. And there's not one because we are editing the head right now. So let me go ahead and click back. Let's advance to 60. I'll enter that value. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave this right at 1. Actually, I'm going to just edit that and put a 1 in. So we get this held expression right here. And let me go ahead and move sideways a little bit so we can see more of what's going on. Again, this is the posing camera, not the main camera, so we're not animating that. At 60, I adjusted to 1. Now we'll go ahead and go to 90. And I'm going to have this brow furrow go away. I'll enter a value of 0. And in fact, I want to go ahead and let's go ahead and have the brow come up just a little bit. I'll enter here a value of say 0.5. So the brow comes up a little, and we'll leave it like that as we go over here and the head turns. Next thing, let's work with some eye blinks, and then we'll get into the eye motion. So again, a little bit of a tedious process, but you can see you can do it very regularly, and then we're going to look at curves and how we might edit and take a look at some of these as well, one of the features of POSER 2014. All right, one thing that people do is they usually blink not once, but a couple of times in quick succession. So what I want to do is right about here, say at 15, halfway between, I want our character to blink over the course of maybe just 4 frames. So what I'll do is close up the brow morph. We'll come down to eyes. We've got blink left and right. And I'll just enter a value here of actually, let's see, we've got that. I'll just do 0. Let's do 0.1. And do the same thing for left blink. 0.01, a little bit off. And irregularity in blinks is okay. Actually, let me undo that because we've just got a general blink control. I'll undo by Command-Z, Control-Z, so we don't do it individually, but you can. Let's come right here and enter a value of 0.1. So we get a slight little bit, and we have a keyframe right here. If I expand the head right here, don't need to do that. Our eyes, let's see, our eyes should be contained within there. Are we just going to need to scroll that? Brow furrow. Here's our blink function. There we go. All right, now I'm simply going to step ahead just a couple frames. Step forward 1, 2. And now on the blink function, let's go ahead and take this all the way up to 1. Eyes are closed. I'll move forward 2 frames. Blink function, let's take this to 0. 2 frames. Want to have a little frame so we get kind of an in-between motion right there. Blink back to 1. And then forward 2 frames. And back to 0. Now as we go ahead and scrub the timeline a little bit down here, we'll see our character blink as the head moves. Now look at this. The eyes go completely wild right there. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this just because it's, well, frightening. What can you say? What is happening is that POSER is automatically tweening in between the pose sets that we have. Let me get that off there. And it's interpolating what's going on with a curve. Let's go ahead and take a look at the curves function right here. I'll click on the curve right here and we'll get the curve editor in front of us. The program is trying to help us out right here and smooth the motion between animations. And so what it does is it takes the eyes, since we're blinking them closed at one point, and averaging the distance between here and here and making it work naturally. I really don't want that to happen. So what we can do is come back to our Keyframe Editor right here and change. Currently it's spline based, which is done by default. I can click on the line based right here and we don't get that expression. See, the character's eyes over here have returned to normal. This entire curve has been taken, I should say the smoothness has been taken out of it, because eye blinks happen very fast, at least in the way we're doing it right here, and we don't need to continually add curved motion to it. So let me close this. Right here you'll also notice that the colors have changed in the Keyframe Editor, and that's just a visual indication that we are now working with a linear tween instead of a spline based tween. So let's scrub this timeline a little bit. We get this frown going on, the character blinks a little. We kind of actually sped through that because I was moving so fast. And they turn their head this way. And what I'd like the character to do is right here about frame 70 is do that again. So what I can do is, we're at frame 70 right here, but I'm going to click on this little scrubber bar inside of the window, and I'm simply going to click on this first keyframe right there, and then I'll shift click over here on the last keyframe for the eye blinks. It has drawn a little faint white rectangle around that. You can click and drag and do the same thing if you want, but I'm simply going to come up to edit and copy, and you can use the keyboard shortcut for that as well. Let's come back down to, say, frame 70. I'll click that, and what I'm going to do is simply paste in what we just did. And I'm not seeing it right there. Let me highlight this right here and paste again with keyboard shortcut. There we go. That's been pasted in there. So just highlighting this line right here to make that work. Let's scrub inside our timeline editor just a little bit and see what's going on. Okay, we have eyelids coming out of her head like cat ears. Really neat. So what I want to do then, let's go ahead and just click drag right around here. This area has all been highlighted. I'm simply going to convert this all to a linear selection. Let me come back here and make life easy on us. I'm going to click and drag to select these keyframes as well. Linear selection. So now when we go ahead and scroll this, we're still getting some rather interesting motion in there. Let's take a look at our keyframe, or not our keyframe, our curve editor, and see exactly what's going on right here. We don't want mouth. Let's try blink. Let me highlight that before we get this open. Mouth is highlighted. Let's come to blink, curve editor. Now we can see what's going on right here, and this has come back down to right here. We've got one very exaggerated keyframe down here, and this is due to the fact that I didn't take out the spline based editing before we started. Very easy to fix that. I can go ahead and just bring this up to something that looks a little more normal right there. Alright, that's been completed. So now as we drag the scrubber right here, we can see our character blink, the head turns, get another little blink, and as we get back to, say, right around here towards the end of the animation, I want those eyes to blink again. But this time let's go ahead and just copy these keyframes, and if I want to be very specific again, I can click right here, shift click over to the left, capture just those, copy. Now let's scrub down to, say, about 105. we'll paste in there, and we get, again, repeated animations. So very easy to control that and go ahead and reuse work that you've created. Character comes over here. Let's get them to blink here. Now we can go ahead and work with the same techniques to go ahead and get a little bit of mouth expression, maybe a little bit of a sly smile at the end. And if we're going to go ahead and have eyes go side to side, this is also one of those functions that works very much like an eye blink, where the eyes move so quickly. As somebody's thinking about something, their eyes move left, right, left, right. It's super fast. So you can do the same thing if we come down with, say, we've got look up, look down, not lower left. Here's eyes side to side. So we can do the same exact trick that we've done with the eye blinks to go ahead and get this really fast motion that's believable. Let me undock this right here to floating. I'll pull this off to the side. We'll change to our main camera. And now if we go ahead and play this, let's go ahead and go all the way back to the beginning. We can start to see the animation shaping up. We've got our character looking puzzled, and their eyes are blinking a little bit. Then they look back over where the person's talking. We could create more of a hesitation in there, coming back and selecting an individual keyframe and reorienting the body with the parameter dials. Or we can work with the curve editor and go ahead and modify the curve and make that motion a little less significant. So working with human animations and little features, you work from large to small, and then you go ahead and adjust the small animations either in the curve editor if you have 2014, or just with the regular keyframe editor. Go to the keyframe itself and change the motion just a little bit, and it will be recorded in that keyframe. So again, very easy to do, but it's a complex function in working with animation and human characters in POSER.